And the race immediately leading into the Belmont will be the traditional Belmont Day staple in Manhattan at 1.25 miles on the turf course. Nick Tammaro here to take a look at this Manhattan, joined by Darin Zoccali. Darin, this is always one of my favorite races, not only on the Belmont card, but really of the year. Just an annual opportunity for horses that maybe are coming off of longer distance races, like we have some this year, some that are maybe generally been going a little bit shorter. It's always a great matchup.
And no, it absolutely is. It usually brings together a good field, a big field of runners, which you like to see going long on the turf. And I think this is a race that in years past has really provided some good value. I remember Graham Motion bringing a horse in here a couple of times. I think that paid $30-something or $40-something. So I think this is a race that you can find good value, and it's part of our money back offer at TwinSpires Friday and Saturday. Money back on all eligible races. Get money back for second if your horse run for second if there's 5 horses in the race. Get money back for second and third if there's at least 8 horses in the race. And be sure to go to twinspires.com, go to the offers page, and opt in to take part in that great promotion.
Yeah, Graham Motion actually won this race 2 years in a row with Ascend.
Yeah.
And the second horse was something quality. I can't remember the horse's
name. You're right. I remember because I had a nice win bet and I was at Belmont.
It was about 29-1. I think the following year was Prado rode the horse that was it. He broke from the 13 post. That was
knocked me out of the pick 5.
Right. Not that we need to go down bad memory lane, but I bet Channelmaker that day and he never got a spot to run through. That was back when he was a closer. Anyway, this race is a really nice matchup on paper. Obviously, the horse that sticks out in terms of morning line prices and where the conversation starts is with number 8, Up to the Mark, who was tremendously impressive in his first 2 turf starts. And then I think we all wondered whether he would be able to continue on with on that upward trajectory. And he ran into a monster in the Maker's Mark Mile and Chez Pierre, who'll also run in this card a little bit earlier. But that Old Forester Turf Classic last time, Darin, that was no joke.
No, this horse is legit. And talk about how a horse just completely flipped a switch when switching surfaces. I mean, Pletcher put this horse on the turf and it was like, okay, where you've been all my life kind of thing. But yeah, his effort in the Maker's Mark, obviously, especially being behind Modern Games, who would come back to score his next start overseas just this past weekend. Look, what can you say? I mean, this could be the leading American turf runner right now. His Turf Classic was visually impressive. It earned a good figure. If you're going to try to cut into that at all, maybe Hong Kong, Harry, and Spooky Channel are not necessarily the top flight type runners that he's maybe running into here, but that's kind of nitpicking. And if you're trying to, beat him with a price, but I do think this horse is a completely legitimate turf horse.
Yeah, I think it's hard to argue with that. It's the step forward again last time out was just remarkable, especially from a horse that had been running progressively better with each passing start. One of the names that we've seen in American turf racing over the last few years really taking it by storm has been Charlie Appleby, and he's got a couple of runners in this field headed by Ottoman Fleet, who won the Fort Marcy, which is a theoretical prep for this race. Not that a lot of Fort Marcy alums have been victorious in the Manhattan, but Ottoman Fleet was able to get a pretty sweet trip through on the inside. Are you buying or selling Ottoman Fleet at 5-2?
At 5-2, I'm selling, not because I don't think that he's not a win contender, but he couldn't have gotten a better trip in the Fort Marcy. I mean, he had a loose leader up front that was 56-1 that kind of ran off. He just sat along the inside and continually crept his way up on the far turn. They came off the turn and the lane that was in front of him just opened right up for him and he came through on the inside. And he won. I wasn't completely impressed by it. He was under a drive to kind of edge away from horses that would all be long shots in this particular spot. I know City Man did come back to win. And look, I'm not knocking him. He was a nice horse overseas. He ran well behind Nation's Pride, who was a quality horse who had a couple of good runs in the States as well in his career. But at 5-2, just a little bit too short to take off that dream journey.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Look, and we can talk about the other Godolphin runner for Charlie Appleby. That's the 3 Warren Point. He was 3-5 in the Man of War last time out, coming off a win in the His Highness the Emir Trophy Group 1 over in Qatar. And pretty clearly, and I'll let you expand a little bit on it, he did not have the cleanest of trips.
No, it was kind of bizarre to watch. He went into the starting gate with a blindfold on, and I've certainly seen that before. But the blindfold was literally not removed until the starting gate was open and removed by the handler. So you're losing a little bit of time because the handler is reacting to the gate opening when he needs to hold and pull the blindfold off. So Warren Point did not get off to a good beginning that day. he made a middle move where he kind of just ran off from the 5 furlong pole to the 3/8 pole, got up with the leaders, and then just kind of ran on evenly throughout the stretch, was in about a 5-horse blanket photo for second. He's better than that effort looks on paper. I do think he's going to improve. My only question is going to be, is he going to have that issue in the gate again with the blindfold? And is he going to get a fair start and a good trip? But if he's going to be twice the price of Ottoman Fleet, I'll take the 5-1 on Warren Point versus the 5-2 on Ottoman Fleet.
You know, one of the conversations that took place around Breeders' Cup time last year was a lot was put into the fact that William Buick opted to ride Nation's Pride over Rebel's Romance, and William Buick is opting to ride Ottoman Fleet rather than Warren Point. Now, Warren Point's had success with Richard Mullen. Ottoman Fleet has had success with both, arguably more with Richard Mullen off of that last win. He did win a Group 3. You read into that at all, or is that just noise?
No, I mean, I try not to let jockeys really determine which direction I go in, because we also, jockeys may be making a decision for future purposes for which horse they think is going to be better over the long term. And I certainly do respect that. I'm making decisions based on value, based on betting one specific race. If they were both going to go off at the same price, maybe it's a different story. But if the value is going to lie on Warren Point, I'm not going to let a jockey decision influence my play.
The winner of the aforementioned Man of War was the 6 Red Knight, who is 8-1 on the morning line in here. You know, kind of a funny story in that Trinity Farm, who bred this son of Pure Price, they retired him at the end of 2021 and felt like he had done about all he could. And the understanding I have is that somebody from the farm called the owner and said, he's not done yet. You might want to try and put him back in training. And then they did what you want to do with a distance turf horse and gave him to Mike Maker. And here he stands, a Grade 1 winner and a multiple Grade 2 winner since then. I think he's very dangerous in here.
Yeah, a visually impressive move in the Man of War where he rallied wide on the far turn. And while I won't say he necessarily looked like a winner every step of the mile in 3/8, you could tell at the 3 furlong pole that I read Ortiz that particular day was completely full of horse, because he was advancing up while wide, while being asked absolutely to do nothing. So he's coming off of a big effort. He's come back extremely sharp to start this year. 2 wins and a narrow defeat to Verstappen in the Elkhorn. He's extremely dangerous. And if he does get any kind of a pace set up in front of him, there's no reason not to expect him to come running again.
Yeah, I agree. And I felt like to a great extent, this horse was always a little bit better when he was able to drop off of it and make a run from there. He did show a little bit more speed earlier in his career. And I think 1.25 miles might work fine for that, because the pace in here should be relatively legitimate. The runner up from the Man of War was the 5 Soldier Rising, who goes second off a layoff here. He's had a hard time breaking through for a win, but he sure has knocked on the door with multiple in the money finishes in graded stakes racing, including a couple of Grade 1s in the last 8 months or so. Soldier Rising, just a bit player?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard to see him kind of overtaking Red Knight off the last, but I guess he could improve second race back off the layoff, and he might have a move forward in him. He's always been kind of a cut below the top here. And I know now getting to his H5 season, I respect Clement. He could certainly take a step forward here. But Soldier Rising for me is at 12-1 is a horse that I could certainly see filling out some tries underneath. And I think he could add some value to the exotics to be sure. But I do think a win might be slightly out of reach.
I told myself I'd never forgive Rock Emperor for losing this race 3 years ago during COVID when I needed him horribly. And he's never shown up at all when I've needed him, certainly when I haven't. He looks like the clock may have struck midnight.
Yeah, I mean, the Fort Marcy was his first race back off the layoff. You know, I thought he had a pretty good trip that day, and there were just others in there that were better than him. He did win the Bowling Green last year up at Saratoga, beating Arklow. You know, this American turf contingent has been hard to kind of get a real good gauge on for quite a while. You had Warlike Goddess, who was probably the best, and she was a filly last year. This particular 7-year-old is probably over the top at this point of his career and would need to really reach back with a lifetime best performance if he's going to get the job done here.
I've always told myself, beware of a Mike Maker horse that's going to be forwardly placed off a bullet workout. I don't think Ocean Atlantique can win this race, but I sure wouldn't be surprised if he hung around for a piece of it. He didn't run that bad at Churchill last time.
No, he didn't. And I think he's going to be much closer than he was at Churchill, which I think is going to play to his advantage.
That's the difference, right?
Yeah, I do think that's a big difference here. There's a lot of horses that are going to take back and make one run. I think he can get around them pretty quickly here. And these horses that have come from Turfway, regardless of where they've gone, they've been dangerous in a lot of spots, whether it's been going to Churchill, going to Keeneland, coming off the synthetic and running on dirt. And this horse ran just fine in the Turf Classic. And if he's got to move forward in him and works out a good trip, you're going to get a big number on him. I don't know if he can win, but Can he run second or third if the cards fall right? I think he can.
I agree completely. Darin and I are both going to go to Warren Point, hope for a little bit more racing luck, and we're going to need to be blindfolded if something like that happens shortly after the start. My friend, thank you so much.
Good to join you, Nick. Best of luck this weekend over at Belmont.
Everybody, make sure you're opting into those great promos Darin talked about at TwinSpires.com and playing along with all of us. For Darin Zoccali, Nick Tammaro here. Until next time, best of luck.